Hi, everybody. This is Crypto Rich, working with you to get rich with crypto, filling our pockets with crypto profits. I am thrilled to have with me Rafael, the Crypto Vigilante, which is also part of the Dollar Vigilante setup. Now, before I introduce him and let you know what we're going to be talking about, actually, which is Bitcoin SV, please subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Crypto Rich YT, join my official Telegram channel. And if you're watching this on YouTube, come over to BitTube. Censorship-resistant platform. You can also earn 2 coins just for surfing the internet. And I'm not going to get deleted or have my channel disappeared by YouTube's censorious algorithm. That can happen on YouTube, not on BitTube. You can also find me on Library and on Bitchute.
Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
Hey, Rafael, thank you so much for making yourself available. This is, I think, the second or the third time. I don't know which order this video is going to be in that you and I have spoken. We did a video which is on your channel about Pirate Chain with Loots, and I'll recommend people go and watch that channel. It's an in-depth discussion about Pirate Chain and privacy. Do you want to start by just giving us a brief introduction about yourself and what you do and who you are?
Hi there, guys. Yeah, so we have a financial newsletter called the Crypto Vigilante. I'm one of the fundamental analysts there and one of the editors there as well. I'm an early Bitcoin adopter. I was part of the BitAngels network. I did a lot of the early venture capital and private placement deals for early Bitcoin startups. So I've been in the space for a very long time, since like 2012. And I love what I do. I love cryptocurrency, and we're very passionate on everything crypto. And we provide as thorough and as comprehensive of an anarcho-capitalist perspective as possible. So Crypto Rich wants to talk about Bitcoin, specifically the big blocker perspective on Bitcoin, and more specific than that, the Bitcoin SV, the BSV perspective on Bitcoin. And I think he wants to ask me questions because I'm an anarcho-capitalist, and I find a lot of merit in BSV. So I think he's curious as to why I'm fond of BSV, and I'm ready to answer any questions.
Yeah, no, thank you. And for those of you that don't know the Crypto Vigilante, that is part of the Dollar Vigilante newsletter. It's like a subsidiary. And if you don't know Dollar Vigilante, you may or may not have heard of Jeff Berwick, but I recommend you go check them all out. And I'll have all the links in the description below. And Rafael also runs a YouTube channel called Crypto Vigilante, so go check that out. And when you and I talked about Pirate Chain, you told me afterwards stuff about Bitcoin SV, and I don't really know much about it. You know, there's a lot of bad press. I'm not interested in any sort of mudslinging. I just want to know about the ins and outs of what makes Bitcoin SV distinct and special.
Well, you just did the first thing necessary in order to understand the project, right? Which is not to listen to the masses and do your own research. That's the number one thing, right? Yep. And we call that passing the intelligence test, right? Where you just don't give into that crypto tribalism, but actually do the research for yourself. Because something that we also say is that profit seeking is a lonely road, right? If you're a capitalist, you have to be okay with being by yourself and having your own perspective on things, right? So as a rule of thumb, what I tell our subscribers is to make sure to research and look for things, and to look into things wherever people tell you not to look at things. So wherever someone tells you not to look, that's where maybe you should be looking. Yes. And so it says a lot about you that you've reached out and you want to talk about BSV. Honestly, this probably not as controversial of a coin than BSV, but a lot of its controversy comes from actual ad hominems, because when you actually look at the technology and what BSV is about and what it's capable, then you're going beyond that. You're no longer failing that intelligence test. You're actually looking beyond the accidentals or the world of appearances or whatever people want to show you, but you're actually looking in depth. So let's get to it. Your question was...
Rafael, if I can just say something on that. That's a really good point, sure. Because many people think Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. They don't examine it. And then they lose out on the opportunity of Bitcoin. Or I know in the UK, the Iraq war, weapons of mass destruction, let's go and bomb Iraq and kill people. No, you got to dig a bit deeper. And even now with what's going on in terms of the pandemic and also a certain political event on November the 3rd, which we're not allowed to talk about or suggest that there are any widespread fraud allegations there, right? Anyway, so Bitcoin SV forks just saying the importance of digging in, Bitcoin SV and Bitcoin Cash forked from Bitcoin August the 21st, 2017. Why did the fork happen, and what this?
I wouldn't frame it like that.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily frame it like that because there's the small blocker worldview on Bitcoin is just as valid as the big blocker worldview on Bitcoin.
Mhm.
And if you are someone that is in favor of one side over the other, maybe you need to have a bigger open mind. Because look, when we started the Crypto Vigilante, one thing that I talked to Berwick about was like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this right. And we're going to bring in guys that are, because Berwick and I are more of the big blocker worldview regarding Bitcoin, right? Berwick currently is more fond of like Bitcoin Cash. I'm more fond of Bitcoin SV. But in order for us to have a healthy dialogue, in order to be able to give subscribers the best analysis possible, we couldn't be coming from our own objective perspectives. We need a well-rounded perspective on things. So Ed Bugos, he's just very objective person, and he's not someone to immediately take a stance on something. And he's just incredible when it comes to being an objective analyst. So Ed Bugos sees the values and he challenges all perspectives. So Ed Bugos really never takes a stand on things. He's just like, Ed Bugos is kind of like what every analyst in the world should strive to be. He continuously focused on being objective. Mm-hmm. But I had my subjective perspective was that of a big blocker in the Bitcoin debate, and so was Jeff Berwick. So I went out and I got the best dude to complement this amongst other traits that Mr. X has. And Mr. X is more of the small blocker perspective when it comes to Bitcoin. Mr. X is also a privacy maximalist, and he loves Monero and he loves Pirate Chain. Those are like his babies, right? He loves those coins. But when it comes to the Bitcoin debate, Mr. X is more of the small blocker perspective, BTC. Mr. W is also someone that has he's a genius when it comes to technical analysis, and his worldview highly influenced by his markets. He really sees a value in BTC, and he's also more of the BTC perspective. So our team at the Crypto Vigilante is very evenly spread out amongst these perspectives regarding Bitcoin. So what I'm going to talk to you here is not just the BSV perspective, but what I think is more of the best and most sane perspective regarding Bitcoin in general, regarding all of these things, right? When you look at Bitcoin at a fundamental level, you realize that Bitcoin at a fundamental level is a network of miners, right? It's a network of computers that come together to create what we know as the blockchain and to attest the history of transactions over time, right? And that has a lot of beautiful implications and a lot of great things that actually have manifested differently within each and every single manifestation of Bitcoin, which is Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, and BTC. But overall, Bitcoin in itself is a network of miners. Bitcoin is a competitive network of miners that it currently monetizes across three main chains: BSV, Bitcoin Cash, and BTC, right? I used to be a miner. If I put on my miner hat, there's nothing more amazing for me as a miner to know that there is not just one blockchain competing for my business in the future. There's also Bitcoin Cash competing for my business in the future, and BSV also competing for my business in the future. Now, that is kind of like the holistic explanation if you want to understand Bitcoin from a meta perspective. What we've always found in our study to be the most sane perspective in addressing all of this is to have what we call the Bitcoin index, right? Which is to have one BSV and one Bitcoin Cash for every BTC that you own. And you let the market decide. You don't have to get into the fights or into the arguments. You just sit back and relax, because you know that the most powerful network of computers in all of crypto are competing and are looking out for your best interest. No matter who wins out of BTC, BSV, and BCH, the miners will win. And the miners will always choose what is best, not just for yourself as an individual, but for the network as a whole, and most importantly for themselves, so that they can be sustainable businesses, right? Any miner that goes against that is a suicidal miner, and is actually killing themselves, because they will be orphaned out of the network. So you have so that is the holistic understanding of Bitcoin, right? That is Bitcoin from a holistic understanding, seeing Bitcoin as a competitive network of miners. Now, within that worldview, we have different worldviews, right? Within that holistic meta perspective, how do we approach the scaling of Bitcoin. That was the question, right? And BTC's perspective was one where they wanted to keep a BTC limited and capped at 1 megabyte. They added SegWit, which which removed the chain of digital signatures onto an extended block, which to me, as a big blocker, that opens up a huge can of worms that we can get into if you want to talk about that. But then SegWit also increases the amount of data that can be stored on the BTC blockchain a little further. Like I think it's like 4 megabytes. So it's not really 1 megabyte, it's like 4 megabytes. Okay, good. With SegWit. But you also lose things because of SegWit, because you remove the chain of digital signatures onto an extended block, which I think is a bad thing. But whatever. That's another perspective. That's another conversation altogether. So the worldview of the big blocker, like myself, like Jeff Berwick, was that Bitcoin in its original design is perfect. And what happens is that people, well, it's perfect, and we can get into an argument of whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent. But the bottom line here is that the market should be allowed to experiment with this worldview on Bitcoin. And in my perspective, now I'm talking as Rafael here. In my personal perspective, the most perfect manifestation of Bitcoin is found in BSV, because in BSV you take that original worldview of that original composite of Bitcoin, that original design of Bitcoin, and you take it to its ultimate logical conclusion. And then you have the effects of what we're seeing with BSV. And a lot of people are not paying attention because of negative propaganda, because of there being a lot of tribalism. But again, I love maximalists. I can't say I'm a maximalist per se, but I love maximalists because they compete for me. And I don't want someone that is half-ass about their coin. I want an army that is dedicated in the success of their coin. So I love maximalists. I champion maximalists, and I wish them the best for every one of their projects. But that's because I'm an investor. I don't have to be involved in the fight. I can just have a diversified portfolio and sit back and let the best one win. So that gives me freedom to actually experiment and look at everything in the market objectively. And so when I'm able to do that as an investor, I look at BSV and I see something that I don't see anywhere else in the market. And we can get into that, but should look into it more because.
Sure. Well, tell me a bit about the features.
I can talk about it forever. It's great. I mean, it's very different. It's unlike any time.
Okay, now your signal was broken.
Yes, Crypto Rich?
Yeah. Well,
all right.
Tell me about the features of Bitcoin SV. What does it do? How come it can do that?
So Bitcoin SV is nothing more than the original Bitcoin protocol at scale. And it answers this question. Can you do with the Bitcoin blockchain as you please? And the answer within BSV is yes. Within big blocks, you can do as you please. Miners within Bitcoin SV are allowed to operate as they wish, to transact on whatever transactions they want and they please. Entrepreneurs are able to use the Bitcoin blockchain in BSV as they please. They can create applications on top of the Bitcoin SV blockchain, right? And they don't suffer from the problem of having a coupon economy like you do in EOS or in Ethereum, where every new application has its own token. In BSV, it's more economically sane and more economically literate, where everyone uses the same unit of account, BSV, and as long as your transactions are accepted by the miners, and you could use the Bitcoin blockchain, the BSV blockchain, as the backend to your business. So
you're talking about
this opens up
smart contracts on the BSV blockchain. People can build applications on that. It uses the same coin as the main blockchain, BSV. So you don't need another token or anything like that.
Correct. So the big argument here is that many people within crypto at the beginning of Bitcoin would say those things are not possible on BTC. And what they did is that they disabled a lot of opcodes. But there are a lot of people like Mike Hearn, Gavin Andreessen, who Satoshi left in charge of the Bitcoin repository, right? And a lot of other big blockers that were like myself, they're like, no, that is possible. So there was a huge effort within Bitcoin. There's a huge contingent that remained in charge of BTC that said, you can't do that on the Bitcoin blockchain. And we were like, no, you can. And so that led to all the fights, that led to all the forks. And now we're showing the world that it is possible and it's happening on the BSV blockchain.
Okay. And what sort of applications have been built and are being used?
So, gosh, I mean, right now there is like Twitch.com, Powping. They're like similar to Twitter. There is also a Relica world, which is like Instagram on the BSV blockchain. And there's so many that sometimes I have a hard time keeping up, to be honest. There's a lot of there's a new application that just came out called Caster, which is to do video conferencing and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on in BSV that it's that I think is important to keep an eye on.
Sure.
There's a lot going on.
That's incredible. I didn't know any of this. And then one of the things that occurs to me is because there isn't tokens, there's just the one coin, then it means that there's interoperability between the different applications. Like,
yeah, you know, correct.
If I'm in one ERC20 project here, I got to convert that token to Ethereum to get the other token on some other ERC20 project.
Yeah, at the Crypto Vigilante, we think that's economically retarded, honestly, and we call that a coupon economy.
Right.
Imagine the world does not function like that. Human beings do not function based on coupons. Could you imagine going to Target and only being able to use Target coin, or going to Macy's and only being able to use Macy's bucks, right? And imagine trading your chicken coin for my bread coin. I mean, that makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
Bad money is driven out by good money, and the best of money becomes the main layer of exchange. And that's what the best of money allows you to cooperate with one another. So allows you to cooperate with one another best. And so, yeah, I don't agree with the coupon economy structure. And I think that in order to have a robust ecosystem, I think BSV makes most sense, the way BSV is structured. Now, it's important also to talk about Bitcoin Cash as well, because Bitcoin Cash has a different worldview than BSV. And a lot of changes have occurred within Bitcoin Cash in the past couple weeks, actually. And the future of Bitcoin Cash could potentially rival what BSV is doing. Now, Bitcoin Cash, one of the big differences between Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV has been that in Bitcoin Cash, people have been told that they cannot build applications on top of the blockchain in Bitcoin Cash. They have the same argument that we found in BSV, saying that you're putting up, you're spamming the blockchain, is what they would say, right? But who are you to tell anyone, any entrepreneur, anyone, or any miner, what is spam or not spam on the blockchain, right? That makes no sense. These are like people with central planning ambitions telling others what they should or shouldn't do with the Bitcoin blockchain, and I think that's crazy. I think that you should be allowed to experiment and let the market decide what is quote unquote spam or not spam on the blockchain. I think miners should have the sovereignty to choose what is best for Bitcoin, because miners are those who have the most to lose. A miner is, in fact, the entity within the within the Bitcoin ecosystem, and I refer to Bitcoin Cash, BTC, and BSV, the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. Miners are those who are most invested. Why is that? Because if you hold the coin and something happens in the market, you could short it and get out of the market, right? If you have a startup, a Bitcoin startup, whether it be in any of these three sibling chains, you can pivot that startup to something else in fintech. But if you're a miner, a Bitcoin miner, you're fully invested in computers that are designed to mine only the Bitcoin protocol. So if the Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Cash, and BTC blockchains, let's say if they cease to exist tomorrow, you're left with scrap metal, really, as a Bitcoin miner. Bitcoin miners are those who are putting out the costliest of signals in the market, saying that they're not just spending energy in their proof of work, but they are also investing in highly specialized computers, and the most highly specialized of computers within all of crypto. So to see miners as kind of like a second-rate entity within Bitcoin, I don't think that's correct. And there's a lot of, and that's something that I've seen in BTC and in Bitcoin Cash, but I've never seen that in BSV. And that's kind of like the main perspective in BSV is that it is a coin that is a miner maximalist. It is the miner maximalist perspective within Bitcoin. So we can get more into that, but and there's could be a lot of dispute after this, but I can talk about this forever. And maybe having an interlocutor, someone from the other side, going back and forth with me would be very helpful for anyone listening. But the right, wrong, or indifferent, I think the market should experiment with the big blocker perspective. And at this point, the best manifestation of the Bitcoin big blocker perspective, in my opinion, is BSV.
Right. Okay. Okay. Very good. And then what else is being developed, or what does the future hold for BSV as you see it?